His info is in the chat, y'all. And if you put his name in Amazon, you'll find his books and his calendar and something else. There's so many things. Things you can buy and yeah. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Kojo. That's what I know him as. And Derek and everyone else. So we're going to jump right in. I'm going to actually turn it over, not turn it over, but I'm going to invite Laura to join. Laura and I are the co-founders of Artist Design the Future. I'm the project manager, and we have Laura has prepared a few slides to guide our discussion. And please feel free. This is I'll let Laura take over and share with you how this will go.
Good question. Are we staying here or do we go to a different room?
Oh, we're going to stay here. Everything is transitioning to you. I think that would be good.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen so we can look at the slides and figure out how I can. There we are. Can everyone see that? Oh, good. I'm grateful for every technical step forward. So Artist Design the Future is a concept, a business that Kiela Smith Upton and Sahai Hebert, was born in Louisiana, founded in order to insert artists in planning discussions, community development, especially to achieve affordable artist work live space on the South Side. And I'm sorry, I'm not doing this right. Okay. So what we want to talk about today is why and how, why artists should think about creative space as a business, and how they, I guess actually from personal experience, what I'm kind of encouraging folks to do is maybe to think bigger. And so my experience with artists is that we bring diverse skills, resources, and solutions, and all of us are examples of that. But organizing artists is much like herding cats. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And there's not a lot of money to support it and doing it. But some of the examples that I want to share is about woodworkers in a theater company that joined forces to develop a sustainable partnership. The woodworkers not only built sets for the theater company, helped them build out their space, but built a sustainable business that trained new woodworkers and built custom cabinets for the surrounding community, which included restaurants, retail, etc. So they didn't know they were going to end up there when they started talking, but they were able to kind of build resources that supported their business long term. As a visual artist, this example I worked with a Latino Chicago theater company to help them secure an old firehouse and turn it into a theater. And so I had some experience working in scenic design, and I was kind of thrilled to work in a new capacity with a group of artists, dramatists, as well as graphic designers. And so one aspect of the project was that I painted a 9x12 canvas drop cloth as a poster to showcase their theater work. And after 2 years, they had a collection of 8 artworks that they hung in their lobby. And so it was quite impressive. And it was a lovely kind of brainstorming. It was kind of an easy thing that launched into something bigger. So another example that I use about artists working together is actually based in Minneapolis. And when the building of a new transit line was going to interrupt a commercial district, the Chamber of Commerce and the artists formed a partnership funded with transit dollars to engage the public in this year-long disruption. And so I think more than just percent for the arts, it was important that the artists and the chamber kind of brainstormed something bigger than just artwork decorating the landscape. They came up with programs that activated a number of arts groups and artists, and the artists were working more in a marketing capacity in order to engage the public over this period of time. So I guess the point with that is there's more time spent in forming partnerships and kind of getting to know each other and being able to come up with bigger projects. So to think about transit dollars, which there's more money, I know there's more money available in Illinois, thinking about it. And where artists can provide some direction in developing workforce development with youth, and they can expand their ideas much more than Kiela and I both talk about how artists in Chicago are often treated like we're brought in at the last minute to provide wallpaper for the neighborhood. So I think one of the things that we want to do is describe different ways of participating in the community planning process. So in 30 years ago, we started talking about artists owning their own building, their own space, because we had all been displaced out of any number of neighborhoods. And I shared in the process of doing our project, we worked with a documentary filmmaker that told the story of where we were coming from and why it was important for us. And I shared that Vimeo link in the chat. But working with artists, we laid out options for potential business descriptions and models for ownership. So we talked about cooperatives, we talked about mixed use buildings, we talked about what it costs to buy a property on your own, and how there are ways of doing it as a cooperative that makes it much more affordable, sustainable, easier to get into. You don't have to qualify for bank loans. But the artists sitting around the table, and there were 30 of us, they remained kind of skeptical. We painted a picture, of what we wanted to do. And we were talking about, who's going to lend a bunch of artists, $1 million. That's what it was going to cost. But when we went around the table and added up the rents that we had been paying individually for studio space, as well as residential space working at home, and we added it up, we also kind of went around the table finding out talent, skills, and resources, and the impact. We collected the data, essentially. Who's our audience? Traffic for shows, special events, outreach, how many different schools and audiences did we work with? And the next step was pretty simple. We made a list of skills and services that would be required in developing a project. And so we could go through this checklist and figure out that how we could, there's a lot of this that we could do, and we could hire people for doing what we didn't know how to do. And that came out as a very short list. And so this was our big aha moment. It was like, holy cow, we can afford $3 million. And so we also kind of came up with a list of resources and skills that we could present to either potential landlords, property owners. For us, we would be looking for a cooperative loan from the Chicago Community Loan Fund. And so by covering this ground of artists and services and commitment, number one thing we can offer to anybody in that group was that we eliminate risk. We're describing the community. We can afford it, we can do it. We're also providing significant marketing resources for the community. We're telling a great story. I don't know that landlords care so much about that. They just want to collect the rent. But one of the things that we do better than the chamber is attracting a huge and diverse audience. So I'm open to questions and comments. So right now, what I want to ask you a question are, what are the obstacles and the barriers?
I just want to say, this is when we were preparing for this is what I was referring to this, but I wasn't able to show Laura. And I just want to show all of you all. I had a brief discussion with the, excuse me, with the Wild Yams Black Women Mothers Residency. And actually this was the biggest part of the conversation. What are the barriers to art space access? So I can wait and read it later after people have had their ability to comment, because I don't want to sway what you're going to say. But I just want to say, this is like a really, this is a conversation going on, and it's also a conversation not happening. So it's like happening in the small enclaves of creatives. I'm sure Derek probably can share with us even right now. He's kind of in the mix of trying to find appropriate art space. But I'll just leave it to Laura's question for people to share what you feel some of the obstacles and barriers are.
I mean, I certainly could speak about that, but I didn't want to jump in or anything until Laura was completed.
Did you want to have us make the comments in the chat, or did you want them recorded, Laura?
Well, I'd like a discussion. I want to open it up. You know, I kind of, this is, you know, as an artist, this was kind of kept coming up in all the projects that we've ever worked on. And even in Chicago, with all this new recovery money, the Department of Planning is still working with the biggest, whitest development corporations that exist in Chicago to do community development. And so, you know, there was an announcement just yesterday about a new development in Lawndale, in the land that was silver shovels. So the city long ago was guilty of dumping its worst I don't know, it's worse stuff in Lawndale, and it's taken, you know, 40 years for the community to kind of come out with a plan to redevelop it. And So I don't know that this development plan is first choice of the community. People are rolling their eyes, questioning, who's involved and why were they picked. So lack of funding is part of it, but lack of two-way conversations or the community, which is artists, being in a position to say, we need to be a part of, we need to be at the table and not just painting construction fences.
If I can speak on that, the project that we just did on the southeast side, it is basically called the Urban Trees Project or Initiative. And there are these forms that are fabricated that I'm working with a partner in producing, and we did 5 pieces on a commercial avenue on the southeast side. But before it all happened, the organizations which were approached by these bigger entities in the city, they were given funding, but then they were just asking for input from neighbors and artists in the community. And so when I attended the meeting along with a couple of other artists, it just seemed as that's really what they needed was input, but they really didn't foresee that the artists were going to have a full share.
Right.
So again, we're not talking about any funds. We're not talking about compensation. We're just talking about, let's brainstorm about what the community should look like. So I played along with the agenda until it got to the point where they wanted to see some specifics. And their idea of art was really condescending. And so in my comments, I said, you're going to have to engage artists who are serious as contractors and real developmental entities within your model if you're going to come out with any kind of successful end game or presentation. And and it was interesting, and it developed to the point where they said, okay, we're going to look at you as steering the design and realistically presenting something that the community can appreciate. Because what they offered was something that was just done by the architect. And then I guess an artist was supposed to come along and paint his rendition of what those forms were supposed to be along the business corridor. And then when I presented my proposal and visuals, they were pretty astonished, as if artists could not professionally and intelligently present something that, was real world and sensible and cost effective. And, in other words, what was mentioned in one of the chat comments is, and what you mentioned, Laura, we're there to, do some wallpapering and then go home.
Right.
And I'm saying, I'm not a wallpaper.
So I have a question that what you're saying brings up in my mind, Derek, because this is something very relevant for what Laura and I are working towards, which I think can have a ripple effect, not only in Chicago, but across the art world, is what do you see as kind of what needs to happen for those decision makers, I'll call them, the folks with the pockets, right, with the money, to like what needs, and other people, of course, I'd love to hear what you say too, what needs to be present or be brought to them to kind of not circumvent, but really get to change that narrative so that the way they're engaging us is more respectful and is more grounded and is more real in terms of the value we bring as creatives.
Yes. Well, I could say to that they're looking for, from a real world perspective, and you can respect that point, that they're looking for individuals who they can trust, that are serious enough. And I think that's one of the, from my perspective, it's one of the if I can use this word, it's kind of, well, they they see the artists as just the stepkids, to throw them a few breadcrumbs and
Right.
give them a platform, and they
Right.
see them as
Right.
unskilled, that we're just coming out of our brains and that's it. And one of the things is they want to see that they can trust that the artist will not be scatterbrained, but they'll go in there with a complete or a reasonable picture. And that's one thing I've experienced, is I've had to show them my previous projects and also the support that I've gotten from clients, that they can trust that, because when we started on the project, and the coordinator, he came to my crew and I, he said, "I'm gonna be honest with you, Derek, we didn't think that you all would be able to reach this level of, producing, because we were the first contractors to get the job basically done. We were ahead of everybody else. There was supposed to be constructions of marked stalls and various other effects."
You mean artists can be on time and on budget?
Oh,
What?
wow. What? Oh,
What is
Exactly.
anybody else got comments and thoughts about that?
don't get me started.
Yeah, I have
know, I'm
a
like, you
comment.
and I will
Am I,
go down the path.
yeah, I have a comment. Am I unmuted?
We can hear you.
This is Rocco. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a lot of thoughts about this, being working in the community for like 20, 30 years. And what you guys are discussing isn't new. When you're looking at community development and how we're supposed to, the developers and the people that have the money and the power, how they will pull other populations in, basically because it's a requirement of their funding. So that could be an artist, it could be African Americans, it could be any underserved community. My belief is that it really the artist or that a particular group needs to look at where the policymakers are. Just to say you're going to prove yourself, that's like saying Black people got to prove themselves in order to be at the table. That's just always been the case. It has to come from policy making. Who are the main people? And I think that artists or whatever particular group has to form some kind of an initiative or a collaborative, what have you, to address. I remember last week we were talking about what is the major funder? I can't remember the name now. Somebody mentioned it. I think Laura talked about them.
The community trust.
The community trust, and then there's the other one, the artists. Anyway, it really needs to come from the top in order to change the parameters and the understanding of inclusiveness and how the groups are included. And unless that's happened, then it's always going to be a fight. Also on the artist part or any particular group, understanding the terminology and the guidelines and the expectations of the group that you're trying to work with or get money with. We really need to understand that. We need to understand their language and how to use that language or that thought process to make it so it's easily understood by the powers that be. you know, and that's really difficult to do, but it's really, really important to do that. I'm sure that there's some examples of groups that have done that. I mean, even like with the civil rights movement and what have you, they eventually had to find ways to engage with the powers to be. So that was a term of changing policy. And that's the harder route to take, but again, that might be the most effective route. We can go in as a small group or go in as an individual and try to explain what we do and how we do it. But unless that the powers that be that have the money know that they have to be answerable, they're just going to marginalize, and they're going to continue to marginalize groups until we can find a way to make them pay attention, or that in their guidelines for funding, how do they engage? I mean, it's more than just pulling a group of people together and ask them, what do you think? What do you see? And that's basically all most of them do as an afterthought.
Yeah.
So it has to be some way or another to change the policies and how they are required to engage our community.
Somebody else trying to comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, I have a comment on that. I think what you're talking about, what we're discussing is on a community level. Like, okay, I just give an example. Like, I'm an independent artist, you know, like I earn my living as an artist, you know, jewelry designer. And now that I'm retired from that, I'm into the visual art now, you know, like painting, etc. What I have learned over the years is the first thing when we're approaching someone, an organization for fun, they want to know what's in it for them.
Right.
You know, how they're going to get, how they're going to make money off of it. You know, if it's a government level, then the government want to justify, you know, they got so much money to use for community services thing. But for the average independent artist, like what's going on now, their main concern is marketing what they have, you know, and that's been sort of solved now because now with social media, you know, we can reach just about any collectors or museums in the world, you know, and deal directly, you know, purchase from, you know, with collectors or art lovers and so forth. So I guess what the bottom line here is like, what's in it for them in the long run, because either they have their own personal funds that they willing to invest, nonprofits or however, government, you know, they have to justify in giving or loaning, you know, whatever it takes to get such project, you know, started and to run it. I don't know if that's relevant to what we're talking about here, but
It's quite relevant, but I think Derek, you had your hand up next, and then there was 3 people that had their hand up. Rhonda already commented. Rhonda, did you want to lower your hand or?
Okay.
All right. So Derek, you were going to comment?
Thank you. Just trying to be brief about it. I think one of the biggest concerns is that an artist has to, unfortunately, show his ability in order to get into or create what a lot of these younger generations are doing with social media, and that is becoming an influencer. So is your work relevant to them? And as unfair a statement as that is, in this unfortunate machine of a world that we're living in, you know, what does it take for you to become a modern day Picasso in their eyes, or a, you know, Cy Twombly, or any of these other artists that are out here that either dead or living? You know, they've already made this footprint because they got inside that inner circle of individuals that has accepted them. You know, it's like joining a club, it feels like.
In the other room.
And that's what it feels like.
Inside it.
You know, and of course, unfortunately, people of color are finding themselves fighting to be accepted and respected, to be able to, you know, get the exposure and the place to be able to have these kind of world level works and opportunities. And so just in my personal experience, having meeting after meeting after meeting, and some of those meetings just don't end up doing anything. And then you get that one or two, and then here comes D-Case, and you get accepted. That really helps a great deal to have one or two or three projects in your portfolio that's on a level that they then can say, oh, this guy or this woman is able to perhaps live up to our expectations. It's the system that we're living in. And we have to take it with a grain of salt and not become upset by it, but continue to form our moves in such a way where we can get into those systems and be accepted. Not that we need them to, not that we need them to validate our own feelings about our work, but it is good that we develop that relationship and have something in our portfolio that they can recognize. It's, oh, you know, and oh, you can do this. Well, yeah, knucklehead, yes, you know, and you know, we this can be done. And by the way, I'm as valid as any other individual if you just give the individual an opportunity.
So I kind of want to piggyback on what Derek is talking about. Derek, I mean, I read a proposal that you shaped recently with the Department of Cultural Affairs, and what was impressive about the way you presented the proposal was that you had all of the support letters from, you know, Chicago Department of Transportation. You had all the partners lined up, all the specs thought out. You know, it was very thorough the way you presented your, you know, your portfolio, you know, and your idea and your concept. You know, so when people were reading that, you know, from the panel, you got high scores because it was just the organization, and you didn't talk randomly about what you were doing. You were very concrete about how you were going to do this placemaking project in South Shore. Am I correct? That's
Yes.
one of the projects that you have. And so, in terms of, I think that a lot of times artists are not taking these types of trainings or coming to the table to learn this part of the administration of projects. So that's something, you know, professional development will help artists with. It's something that, you know, what pop-up research station is kind of like all about. Artists that are have a background in art administration. There's artists that are coming to the table that are architects. That's not a new trend, but there's architects, and now there's artists, and their art practice is as architects, right? You know, so we have a lot of artists that are coming into the field with that background and credentials that are coming to the table to talk about art and placemaking and art development. Laura and Kiela have 30 plus years in the field, you know, and come to the table with that expertise. I don't think all artists that come to the table are shooting from the hip. and but they're reactionary. We do know that we are great advocates when there is a cause and you want to stir the pot. We're great advocates to be at the table, to make those calls, to be at those protest lines, to be at the city hall when our funding and et cetera is threatened. But with that same demeanor, do we show up for public meetings? To have these conversations with architects, to interject our ideas and our concept in developing community. I think that all of us have a role in what we play, and we do have to acknowledge that, like Kayla said earlier, it's like herding cats, right? When artists are all in the room and we're all creatives, we do very good at the brainstorming and putting the stickers on the wall, but then there's a certain skill set that is needed to consolidate that information and make it legible, readable, understandable, and make it part of public policy. And that's, I think, across the board. Because there's, if you look at the arts, there's and look at the employment development department and where the arts fall in career development, we're there. So we can't say that we're obsolete, and what we're talking about is obsolete. I just think the way we shape and present our conversation is very, very important. And that's why I led this with saying I did get a chance to look at what you were proposing for the neighborhood arts program in terms of the placemaking project that you're doing in South Shore, and it was very concrete. It was very organized. It was very, you have all the pieces, all the support. And so all those meetings that you showed up, and said, hey, this is a project that I want to see happen and be the visionist, was very important that happened. But then you have to acknowledge that you had to have all those other pieces to be at the table, right?
Yes.
And to support what you're doing, even though what you're doing is a small, but not a mute part of it, but it's they're doing the infrastructural part of it and supporting what you're doing. And I think that was a great team that you assembled with that. And so we have to think about that in terms of how we're presenting ourselves in the public sphere, not where we're just reactionary at the table. These things are happening, but how do we shape the conversation? I think,
What you said something important, if I might add, a team and how we should collaborate. And even an artist who might be very brilliant in what they produce, they need to recognize that they may have some areas in which they need assistance and collaboration with in order to make that package be appealing, and then be serious about going forward with what was presented. In my case, I've got to certainly go forward and fulfilling. But I like the idea that the support behind the idea was so strong, and I was thankful that team assisted. They saw my thoughts. We met several times to get it worked out and then get the right language. And you're right, artists, they've got to educate themselves and not be too, they can't be nebulous about it. They've got to, really say, what needs to be said, and, show what they're going to fulfill. And so it was not easy, but it was necessary. So exactly. Yes, it's good to, and it's good for me to have built up those good relationships with people, even the architects and the different ones, the SSA people, the talking with representatives, from different entities, CDOT. It was so important for them to see a face with the art, and I'm not just all over the place, but that I have a focus. And that was good for me to be able to be there present. And so that helped a great deal. And so now I'm appreciating the relationships that, should there be other projects, perhaps I have a much better footing, going forward.
I think to contextualize what you're saying for people that might not know these acronyms, I just want to say what some of them are, because part of what you've mentioned in my mind is a lot of artists may have relationships or not, and not understand that the power of collaboration and the importance of it. But like CDOT is Chicago Department of Transportation. DCASE is the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. There was one other you said, but just being able to have the facility to sit down and have these conversations, to negotiate if need be, to engage and lead and guide. It sounds like what you've been doing. I don't think those are skills everyone brings to the table, but they're definitely teachable, I think.
Yeah, you know what, you're right. There are artists that are brilliant with what comes out of their mind and their heart, but they don't necessarily have an acumen or the courage or the patience to get to the point that they want to be. That's the journey, you know. You got to have a big water bottle walking across that desert, because sometimes,
Yep.
you know, it can be. You can say,
That's not a compelling image.
what's that?
I mean, it's a compelling image. It's not an attractive image.
It's not an attractive image, but that's how some artists feel
Yeah.
in talking with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm working with this one guy, and he's doing quite well. He's got an art studio that the organization on the southwest side is helping him to build up. But he said, Derek, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, listen, I'm going to tell you what I have done. And these are individuals. This is a process, and here you can think about. And yeah, for some, it's just hard, and they quickly give up and they retreat.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. I know it's
No, go ahead.
2:25 and we've got, I think, a few people who want to make some comments as well. Harris, I saw you just posted something in the chat. You want to share with us? Because everybody on the Zoom, the live stream can't see that.
Okay, well, I just said that business development and collaboration have been most important in starting out for me. And from what I'm hearing, everyone's been in for, double digit years, 20, 30 years, 40. And that's great because, opportunities like this are what helps me to, know what else I need to do to develop, and building relationships has been most important. And it does help. I heard someone mention, I think it was Ms. Alpha that mentioned about, a lot of people that are starting out in their businesses have some background in architecture. And that was my first major when I started out in college. Although I didn't finish with it and switch to something different, just having some background in something and having the capacity to be able to talk to people is kind of what's helped to get the few opportunities that I've had so far. So I know, things like this are important. So just, I think one of, and I wanted to go back as well, before we started to have the discussion, art washing was mentioned in the chat. And that's very interesting. It's kind of like a thought that I've had about kind of how things work in the industry that I'm not even completely a part of yet, but have seen that I hadn't been able to put a name with. So it'd be interesting and kind of helpful if that could be, talked about as well by any of you.
I'll let Kiela go on, forward on that because
Well, I don't want to I put it in the chat. I mean, I can just read it so that people who, if they're watching on the live, they can hear what I put after you kind of put a definition in there, Alpha. But my experience has been, after my long career as a collaborative, community-based public artist, specifically creating murals with various communities, my experience has been often you run into the entities who are the commissioning decision maker, right? Like they're the ones who are going to either sign the paper to get the money paid to you, or they're going to give you the money. They just want something that looks beautiful, or sometimes they want it to engage the community, but they're just happy for it to, like, okay, make this pretty wall. I mean, this ugly wall look pretty. And there's so much more value that can be gleaned by working with an artist that isn't even addressed. So what I put in the chat says, art washing also refers to art being created just as a surface beautification, but not hiring artists to use their art as the powerful tool that it can be to engage community within the planning and development process. And I'm just curious where people think the idea of trust factors into some of that conversation and engagement with the arts community and the powers that be, as Rhonda was saying.
I don't know that it's a matter of trust. We're talking about big budgets, and we're talking about who's controlling the money and who's making money off of the project. And so, you know, you're sitting on the other side of the table of somebody who wants to squeeze down what you're doing and maximize their profits and their control over the project. So, you know, the thing that artists bring to the table that's so important is, you know, co-design and all the hands that are sitting there and the viewpoints that we bring to it. And so the things that we promote in the activities, you know, cultural competency, that we kind of join with existing networks in the community of artists and non-artists and teachers and students and parents. And so we bring so much to the table, but the problem is the guy sitting there with the money doesn't appreciate any of these points. They don't want to spend money on cultivating the community. They're extracting what they can out of the community. And I think when we're talking about policy and influencing how these money decisions are made and spent, you know, the Department of Cultural Affairs lobbied for and received a percentage for the arts for any federal money that's spent in libraries and public housing and in transit, et cetera. And so there was set aside 6 to 8%. And so they also created a way for artists to submit their artwork to be chosen for all of these projects. So DCASE is doing that for percent of the arts, but they're not doing it other than this grant making, you know. So I think we as artists need to create more effective networks of support. We need to exist as a consortium. I don't think we need another organization or layer of gatekeepers. I think we need to be more effective in putting pressure on the Department of Planning as far as who they're choosing. You know, one aspect is going to the alderman and saying, you know, we don't want to accept these projects that don't have significant and competent and contractual arrangements with artists and people who live in the community. And so I think we need a louder voice. And Department of Planning is kind of moving in that direction, but not really. Because anytime there's community meetings, my experience in reviewing projects is it's kind of a done deal before you get there. They're lawyers, they're kind of explaining what you're doing. And if you question them, they're saying, don't worry, that'll be taken care of. And you're kind of ushered out the door. You know, so the impact that all of this money spending in the community is something important that we need to redirect. And so I think we need to cultivate leadership and advocacy amongst artists, architects, and any advisors who kind of see this community development as being important.
So, Laura, I wanted to Daphne Burgess
I
joined
agree
in.
with Laura. I think that is definitely the way to go, to have a collaborative effort or a cooperative effort to make changes, and so that we can be more empowered. We work as individual artists, we have our individual work, but in order to be involved in that kind of funding, that kind of resource and projects, it has to be more of a collaborative effort rather than as an individual.
So Daphne Burgess is on the call from on the cafe from Moulton, Alabama. Daphne had wanted to kind of, I brought her on to because Omar presented, but also to talk, Daphne, you get unmute, but talk briefly about the collaborative project that is being proposed. Like this whole community process that just happened and was submitted through the state Department of Transportation with a placemaking project. Daphne, are you able to comment on that project? You're still on mute.
There she is.
Hello?
With the
Yeah.
Florida Road Partnership and how the artist at the end of the Florin Road Partnership in putting this project together with the state, the city, and then the local municipality.
So this this project that we actually just submitted a proposal for is a placemaking project with several different partners. The Sojourner Truth African Heritage Museum Executive Director Shona McDaniels has always envisioned art along the Florin Road corridor, which goes from the freeway down to where the museum is actually housed. And through all of her efforts over 20 something years to get something started, it just has never taken off. It was always issues of funding, of course. There were, kind of doubts of the capacity of the museum to take on a project like this. And then also, there were issues of inequities in funding for the arts, blatant racism. And so for multiple reasons, the project just never really was awarded funding to actually create something that was in her vision. So now we're here at this point where there are multiple partners, the city of Sacramento, lots of cross-sector groups, the Florin Road Partnership, which is a business incubator for that particular community, the building owner, and some other smaller grassroots nonprofits and individual artists have come together to do this multi-layer placemaking, which would involve beautification, everything from planting greenery and getting rid of old phone booths and putting up signage for wayfinding and all of those things, but also this interactive component where youth and other community residents would be involved in co-creating these events, really to kind of highlight all the talents and resources that have been kind of pulled into this project. And we were actually on a meeting, and we're really just kind of in all transparency, told that the project wouldn't really be taking off if it weren't for this collaboration with all of these entities. And it wasn't a surprise. We've always kind of, we meaning the Sojourner Truth Museum, have always kind of battled these issues of kind of making the case for the capacity that we currently have in terms of staff and contractors, and then also, and casting a wider net with, community partners as well. So I feel like, now that we actually have the proposal submitted and could actually kind of take a look at all the players involved and what everybody's bringing to the table, that this is probably the closest to actually getting funding that we've ever, been. So hopefully, that is the case. But with that being said, I just wanted to add, I did hear someone talking about this idea of building trust in the community. And it is something that I think is very important. My background as a community engagement coordinator and doing other projects, and going into the communities saying you want to have these art experiences or festivals or whatever the interactive or participatory component might be, it was always met with some question as to, who are you and why are you doing this and what is this for? And, coming from a larger art institution into communities that, did not necessarily come to the museum for anything, for looking at art, for going to events or lectures or anything. There was not a lot of trust on behalf of residents. And it's interesting to kind of be in that situation and realize that, people need to see your face. They need to see you working with them and not just doing something to them. And that I cannot stress enough the importance of taking that time to build that trust, to show up, more than once at something just because, it's a one-off event or something, and building those relationships with people. And hopefully, as I said, that is the case with this particular proposal, because all of these groups have worked together for so long and have that trust within the community. And I just hope that this outcome this time is different, obviously.
Right. And it's one thing, and I know Derek has his hand up, and it's one thing to propose projects, be at the table with the larger institutes like the Art and Cultural Division with the Arts Commission there in Sacramento, but the partnership is a two-person operation with their foundation, and the museum is a larger institution. But the meat of this proposal with the state, with Caltrans, is that it has to connect with a community-based organization of Black, Indigenous people of color. And at the end of this corridor is where the South Side and where all of this work is happening within the community, and that's the connector piece. In order to even make this happen, they needed this piece, but to be told you don't have the capacity and you won't be funded or supported by the larger institution that would have to sign off on it is almost an insult to injury. I'm bringing that up because we're talking about how we intersect in community and being at the table, but to put that little thing aside, the end goal is to get in the door. The end goal is to get this project activated, and the end goal is to create this placemaking and be a part of this placemaking opportunity.
Mhm.
Thank you, Daphne.
Derek?
Yeah, I was just listening to what Alpha was saying. And one of the things that was mentioned earlier in regards to collaboration and the importance of artists perhaps developing a framework so that they're not working so much individually as they are when it comes to a community project, working collaboratively. The project that I just completed with the Chicago Parents and Friends Organization, which is the acting SSA over there, turned out to be pretty successful because of some things that the artists are doing within this project that could be a basis for further projects down the road, you know, in the same manner. And I call it the Urban Trees project or initiative. Anyway, what that means is you've got this core steel piece with arms that come out, and artwork is connected from different artists to these trees. I actually have a picture of what it looks like if any of you all have not seen it, but it essentially pulled in artists who perhaps are trying to get exposure and recognition, respect, and connected to this form, which can have an impact on communities, because now you're giving unknown artists, maybe they don't have quite the business acumen to deal with all the other processes, but they're trained and given a little bit of a class as to what they're expected to produce for these trees, these panels that are attached to these trees of their artwork. And that lets them be a part of the process of being a public artist for the first time, and also presenting to the entities that want to see a product that makes them feel satisfied. They want to do more of this kind of project. So that's what we just worked on as an experiment at the Southeast Corridor, at the Southeast side. And it did really pick up the appeal from the standpoint of the organization to look at those artists and say, wow, you know, we need to continue to do this. And they're actually talking about continuing this particular kind of initiative. And there's another organization on the West End on 63rd. They also are starting their form of this same kind of project, because it brings in little known artists working with professional artists collaboratively, and it brings in the organizations that can also look at these artists and say, hey, we've got resources right here, instead of looking at individuals outside the neighborhood. So yeah, the collaboration part, it works, it really does. But in addition to doing their art, they're trained and taught some of the aspects of, you know, what to do in order to get known, to get exposed, and then they can pass it on or pass it forward, this process. So that's what I'm trying to work on now. And it seems to be starting off kind of good.
Cool. So you're doing everything that I capsulized in this last slide, which is, you know, many hands, many viewpoints. It's sustainable, it's renewable, you know, you're promoting the talents and skills that exist in the neighborhood that the neighborhood doesn't know about and needs to know. So you're also promoting existing networks and fostering the youth engagement with more experienced artists. So you're doing everything, cultivating leadership and advocacy. And, you know, giving an opportunity for feedback. So I think it's tremendous. I mean, that's the impact. That's what artists bring to the table that is not appreciated or recognized by the city. So
Can I just say, because of what Daphne just went back to the question I asked about trust, I really do think part of why the city doesn't believe it is because they don't trust, they don't want to trust artists in the way we deserve to be trusted and that we know we're capable of.
yeah,
Sort of feels like that.
yeah,
I mean, I'm an old guy, so to speak, and you still feel like you gotta get in that labyrinth, to show, your abilities and what you're capable
One
of.
thing I just want to bring out too, yeah, just quick thing that I like to bring out too, is getting paid. That's, when you look at these grants, when you look all the opportunities, there's very limited money that artists can collect based on the coordination of their project. If you're not getting paid, how can you build something? How can you build a collaborative where people are dedicated to fulfilling or doing what we need to do? So the funds for getting paid is very limited. They want you to come to the table and tell you all of their good stuff and show you all of their good stuff, but there's no opportunities for the artists to get paid. Where does that fit in? And I know that's a whole nother conversation, but I just wanted to bring that out.
Maybe that's the conversation for next month's Artists Decide the Future Talk. Because listen, don't get me on my soapbox. I just finished a final report for a grant that it should have been 10 times the amount. And the final report info they wanted was ridiculous. And all I kept saying was, they limited how much money the artist, me, can make. They're asking me to do all this work for a final report for like pennies. And I was the stupid one to apply for it. Well, since we're having a pause, it's 2:51. Like, I don't know if everybody saw in the chat, this discussion was planned for an hour. We know good and well this discussion could go on for hours, and it can. This platform can stay up. People can continue to have the conversation, but I want to take a pause and give the platform back to Alpha and Liza in case there's any announcements or things you want to share, say, relative to the Pop-Up Research Station Cafe and Space in the Gap. And as Artists Design the Future, Laura and I thank you for being a partner here and for giving us this platform to continue these conversations.
Liza?
Thank you, Kiela. Alpha, do you want me to share anything more? I think we shared to everyone here. I'm not sure if we have anyone new. The cafe menu. You are happy to bring whoever you like and start your own conversations. We do have breakout rooms that are available every Tuesday. We can also naturally have a meeting where all of us are together like we did today. It's really just depends on who shows up, but please feel free to join us again. I will put the information in the chat. If you'd like to share your links to your social media accounts or how to reach out to you and network with each other, please also do that on the document. You will see at the top, just click on networking, and we look forward to having you here on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Chicago Central, and at 2 p.m. East Coast. Thank you for joining us.
On our second Tuesday of the month, we have Lisa Gaines McDonald, and she's with Research Explorers and working with the Pop-Up Research Station Collaborative team to take all of our research that we've done in the field for the last 20 years and helping us organize and shape that for our toolkit and also how to archive our collection of pop-ups, events, everything that we've done collectively in the last 20 years. And those professional developments will start on the second Tuesday of each month, and she will be on next Tuesday to talk about research. And that's it. Thank you guys for joining us.
I would like to share something.
Is that Omar?
Yes.
Yeah, Omar, I had Daphne join us. She's from Alabama with Gallery 157, and I was telling her about the Katrina Foundation. So I gave her your information for you guys to kind of talk
Great.
offline. Yeah.
Okay, I would like to share something with the group. I really enjoyed sitting in. I'm so thankful, heartfelt appreciation. There's one thing we have to add to this. We have to write down what we want. We have to speak what we want. And I had many of people tell me 10, 15 years ago, this project I was working on was too big. And a few of them say that still today. But we started from zero and we've made a lot of progress. And it seems to be that you all made a lot of progress. And I see the best things are coming for this group. And I would love to play a part in the role in this organization.
All right, thank you. We look forward to sending you the information for the cafe.
It's an honor to have you here.
Thank
Beautiful,
you.
beautiful vision, and that's exactly what it takes.
Well, I want to thank whoever got this at the last minute, the notification about this. And thank you for being willing. I know sometimes I never know if way far in advance is better or the same day. So thanks for joining us. If you want to continue on, Liza, do you want to give any direction on that?
No, this is a make it up as you go along space, and everybody, I can make everyone a co-host. And from this point forward, take it from there.
Derek, you were going to share an image, and also Kiela, you were going to share the image of the wild yam.
Oh, okay. Well, go ahead, Derek.
Am I able to? I'm able to do that.
If you go in the chat, you can put a link to everybody.
Okay. Let me see. Hold on.
You'll need to get out of there like I told you to.
This is my ID and password.
Are you trying to share the screen?
What is the link, Derek, or do you want to share your screen?
Oh yeah, I was going to share the screen. Okay,
go ahead.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know if I had that capability. Okay, here we go. You see it?
Oh.
Yep, we got it.
Okay.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So this is the
Nice.
urban tree. Okay, it won't expand, so I'm going to force expand it. Okay. So these are the urban trees. They are steel fabricated pieces. I work with a local fabricator. The arms are extended out, as you can see, and on each side, now this was before panels were going to be added here, but as you can see, one of the panels is being displayed here, and another one on the opposite side, and there's 4 total. And then the column itself is painted and weatherized for outdoors. These panels are from different artists in the community. And so there were 5 of these steel tree sculptures made, and there were 20 artists who were able to produce at least one piece and were actually paid as part of the program. They were given a healthy stipend to contribute and participate, and certain standards, they had to reach. And then we weatherized these pieces to make sure that they could withstand the long haul, as far as the weather. So now imagine this type of project going to different communities as you get the CDOT's right-of-way privilege, and artists would then be solicited either through high schools or local programs to submit ideas to participate in this project. And then their work makes them a public artist. And the work is at least up there for 1 year at the most. And then it's taken down and given back to the artist or sold to interested individuals. That is one of the arrangements that was suggested by the organization involved in this whole project. So it was exciting to me, and so I submitted the design for the concept for the tree itself, and then the panels themselves. Ideas were submitted by drawings from individual artists. And mostly it was about trying to get art from those individuals within that community. So every community that considers doing a project like this, artists would be solicited first locally to work with myself and my crew. And, they see their work up there for at least, anywhere from 6 months to a year.
So you're changing out the art, or is this intended to be temporary and the whole tree comes down?
The tree itself can remain. And the thing about it is every 3 years, we go and check to make sure that the integrity of the artwork is still intact. It's easy to repair. And the panels themselves, as you can see this panel here and the panel here, these were from individuals who this work can be returned to them so that new panels from other artists that are solicited can be added to these trees.
Derek, can you open this up wider, like enlarge it and get rid of your, I don't know, export information that's on the side? You can lower the side panel right there.
I've got it in a PDF.
It looks like if you hit that arrow that's just in the middle of the screen by that panel, it might go away. Go down.
Next to where it says organized pages to the
Yeah.
left.
Yeah. On the right, that whole panel on the right where it says organized pages. Go down. Nope, go over to the right. Yeah. See that? No, go over. There's a small little arrow on the left. Go over to the left, over to the left. Over, keep going, right there.
It didn't do it, huh?
Let me see if I can.
Trying to compress.
You know what?
It's
what
coming.
can happen too is it seemed like you could even have how a furniture store to get a new piece of furniture to have a grand opening every time. So this could be like when you change out the art, you have a new opening every time.
Yeah.
Yes,
To get the community out.
that's the idea. Yeah,
What's happening with the sidewalk
it continues to create this expectation. Hey, for this festival, we're going to have new art put up by artists within this community. Then people outside communities can come and, hang out. And that's the intention. Yes, bring musicians, have businesses do tents. It'll be reasons for, like you said.
What's happening with the sidewalk? Who's the muralist, or is that part of your project as well?
No, actually, that was a separate group of artists who came and put this special sidewalk grade deck coating onto the surface there. So yes, that was a second group of individuals, and they can be. I mean, I can find out about who they are, but this is something interesting to last a while on the street.
I just thought that you guys might have been in collaboration together to pull the project together, because I see some other murals happening along the way. So it's a great placemaking project. I really like that concept in Sacramento. They're doing this whole concept of cheers done in metal fabrication like this with images like um, who are the images?
It's a,
Oh, O'Keefe, different Frida Kahlo. They're just doing these cheers that are going to go along that whole corridor like this. So this is a great idea. I like that. Again, the way you're pulling it all together here.
appreciate that. Yeah, it was a wonderful project, and it definitely built up um, a good relationships with the entities that um, that were involved. And what's interesting, I'm just showing this space here. I'm standing with one of the artists, and this was a dock that we were allowed to use, and with a small bit of rent during the time of getting these trees prepped for painting, we were there within this dock space, and the owners, we are in conversation with renting this space out continually. It was located in the neighborhood. So imagine projects like this. Perhaps artists can submit concepts that goes into the final production. And imagine concepts like this being produced right within each of the neighborhoods where these various art forms would be put up and artists are able to participate. It's something that we're trying to work out and give individuals that are little known an opportunity to to showcase their work in a very public way. So we already got another project on its way to being done, because of this particular project that was completed this past summer. So we
So this
feel
is
like
located where? I know it's in Chicago. Where?
this is over on 89th to 90th and Commercial Avenue. And it's part of the Southwest, Southeast and Southwest Improvements Initiative. I think that they're dumping I heard it was somewhere collectively over 60 million with other, street infrastructural stuff that's supposed to happen. And
Are you referring to Invest Southwest?
Invest Southwest.
Okay. Is this separate money from the development, the real estate development?
This actually was income from a private funder with the city. So apparently there was joint operation on that. There was this consortium of business people in addition to the city, from my understanding, that allow this to take place. But the project that's taking place on the Southwest, this is menu money from their improvements budget.
And
You mean
because-
the alderman?
Yeah.
The
because he
alderman
already has
and
a
the
relationship.
GSDC.
You already have a
Yes.
relationship with your chamber, and then you have a relationship with the alderman's office, and whoever's listening. I have a really good relationship with Alderman Dahl. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
if you have a good relationship as an artist in the community, walking into your alderman's office, introducing yourself when they have the day open for the community is resourceful. Going to your chambers and making yourself sitting in there as a business person is useful. And building your base like that is very useful. It helps that you have a relationship with Chicago Department of Transportation based on sitting in those meetings. So you can
Yes.
see how this builds, for the newer artists that are on like RS, this is how it builds when you're building these relationships. It just does, it's not through osmosis or just incidentally happening to you, but it does happen over a period of time when you're building these
Yes,
relationships with people. You're at the table and they trust you because you're there and you're helping to shape like cultural plans. You know, your name is on those
right,
documents that go through. So
yes,
and then like Rhonda was saying, where's the money? I mean, these dots lead you to where the funding is.
yes, yes. And I appreciate you saying that. I was able to, well, I had to. I told them, I said, well, this is a project that's requiring several different processes and I gave them a real world figure and we worked it out and it didn't take long. And they gave me close to what I asked for. And this was in order to allow a budget for the artists as well as, the production of the work itself. Um, and so it's replicating. And, and I appreciate what you're saying, just that trust. I feel like that's gone up several notches, to see the, evident result. But it was really great to work with the other artists, and see they're happy. But what was really good is very low vandalization factor, because you got a vested interest in the artwork. Why would you destroy your own stuff? So
Well,
that was
That's it.
one.
That's such a basic premise of all the murals that I've done my whole career is when you involve and collaborate with the community, they protect what's created because they're invested in it and they have ownership in the ideas and the long-term sustainability of it.
Yes. Mhm.
So that goes back to that whole art washing. When you do engage community in the processes by being youth, artists in those communities, people do take care of the public art that's there. When it starts, one of my projects is starting to get tore up, because there was no sustainability plan written in there. It was supposed to be temporary installation. We got to be careful about these temporary installations because after a while, who is the gatekeeper? Who's responsible for upkeep? Where's the money that pays you, to go back out and do the upkeep of a project? It's supposed to be a contingency or something written in your proposal that you're submitting. I like that idea when you said you're coming back every 3 years, looking at the work, and if it's damaged, who's gonna upkeep it? But did you write it within that proposal that you submitted? And that's really important in public art that we have those that are in there. But I know that one of my projects on 47th and King Drive is a very high, like visual space and people passing by. Before I left town, I'm down in Georgia. I saw
Wow.
panels being ripped off the thing. I'm like, oh.
Wow.
So that meant that I had to put a proposal back through Quad Community Development, which is the nonprofit arm of the Alderman's office, to secure funding, SSA funding, special service area money, to go back in and rehab, repair, or do another community engagement piece to bring youth back out to help, upgrade that thing so the community will take care of it. But, once your artwork goes out there and you don't have a plan, it's,
It's open to
I
anything.
think we could all like give a litany of examples. Mine is the collaborative project we did at Navy Pier, those beautiful mosaic covered benches, huge,
Yeah.
right? They had ongoing maintenance needs, which had not been budgeted for in the original commission.
Wow.
And Navy Pier finally got tired of funding the repairs and they literally destroyed it and ripped it out of the ground. It no longer exists. Like there were 4 benches, now there's only 3. And they ripped out the biggest one. When you walk, you're like,
Wow.
it hurt me for a minute, but then I was like,
Yeah.
that's partly our fault.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's the thing. They have to treat it as an entity that's part of the structure of everything. And that's the conversation of artists being able to be given that respect as well as the work. It's
Well, Put the line item in your budget as deferred maintenance, because that's what it is, just like with a real estate property. You have deferred maintenance, you have capital improvements. You gotta have, don't just call it a contingency, like let that be separate. Let the long-term maintenance actually be a line item separate from contingency.
Good point. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I just wanted to shout out to Eris real quick. I gave you some contact info in the chat.
Yes, sir.
I
do
have
receive
to,
that.
I have to get going. This is really a nourishing conversation. I really appreciate your words, Alpha. Thank you very much. And everything
Derek,
that you,
before you jump off, what is GSDC?
GSDC, Greater Southwest
Development Corporation?
Develop, yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so I've got an ongoing relationship with them as of recent.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Look, you can stay on and watch Eris paint or continue the conversation. Thank you, Laura, for leading us. This is, and Alpha and Liza for giving the platform for everyone to join. It looks like we still have everybody. Oh, hi, Charles. That just happens to be my daddy-o, who's also an architect, who's joined us on other conversations.
If you want a copy of the recording for your record, you can go to Pop-Up Research Station on YouTube once we download it, and we'll add it to our archives.
Cool.
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everyone.
Thank you.
Good chat. Thank you, Kiela, for